I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who ends up in a hotel room at 3 a.m., heart-hammering, making choices that would change everything. But life has a way of dragging you into places you never planned to go. My name is Elena, I'm 47 years old, divorced for 4 years now, and I have one son, Ryan, who just turned 15. I work night shifts as a nurse in a busy city hospital, the kind of job where you see death, pain, and broken bodies on a regular basis until it all starts to feel normal. The exhaustion never really leaves you. You just learn to carry it. My social life is basically non-existent. I come home from work, try to sleep during the day, wake up in the late afternoon, make dinner for Ryan, and head back to the hospital. Week after week, month after month. The only thing that breaks this endless cycle is bowling. Yes, bowling. It sounds ridiculous for a woman my age, but it became my escape. Last year, I joined a local league just to get out of the house, and surprisingly, I turned out to be pretty good. Good enough that I qualified for a regional tournament 3 hours away from home. For weeks, I practiced every spare moment I had. It felt like a tiny spark of my old life coming back. The life before the divorce. Before the constant fatigue. Before I became just mom and nurse Elena. The only problem was Ryan. He's a typical teenager with a rebellious streak. Smart but restless. The last time I left him alone for a weekend, one of his friends decided to see if his truck could fit through our garage door. It couldn't. The repairs cost me a fortune and a lot of sleepless days. So leaving him home alone for this tournament was out of the question. His father? Deployed on guard duty that exact weekend, of course. After stressing for days, I made the only decision that made sense. We were both going. I booked a double room at the hotel near the bowling alley. It had an indoor pool and was walking distance from everything. Ryan actually seemed excited about the trip. He packed his bag without complaining, which was rare these days. We left early Friday morning. The drive was quiet at first. But somewhere along the highway, he started talking about video, games, and his friends. For a little while, it felt almost normal. We reached the hotel around noon. After checking in, I told Ryan I needed to rest before the evening practice session. He spent the afternoon swimming in the pool while I tried to nap. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind kept racing between the tournament, my performance anxiety, and the constant worry about being a good enough mother. That evening, after a light dinner, I headed to the bowling alley for the practice round while Ryan stayed in the room playing his game. When I returned around 11 p.m., he was already asleep. I smiled, looking at him curled up under the blanket, controller still in his hand. For a moment, I felt a wave of love mixed with guilt. He deserved better than a tired, overworked mom who dragged him to a bowling tournament because she had no other choice. The next morning, I woke up early, stretched, and gently shook Ryan awake. "Breakfast?" I asked softly. He groaned, rolled over, then mumbled something that sounded like pancakes. We went down to the hotel restaurant. It was the usual buffet setup. Rubbery scrambled eggs, overly crispy bacon, and those sad little dry mini muffins. Ryan piled his plate high with pancakes drowning in syrup. I stuck to an omelet and black coffee, trying to stay focused for the competition. We ate mostly in silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable, just the quiet comfort of being together. After breakfast, I asked him what he wanted to do before I had to leave for the tournament. His eyes lit up immediately. "There's a mall nearby. They have a GameStop. I've been saving for this one game." I hated malls. The crowds, the noise, the temptation to spend money I didn't have. But Ryan rarely asked for anything. He was a good kid underneath the teenage attitude. So I said yes. The mall was packed. We walked straight to GameStop. He found the used game he wanted. An old title that was somehow priced at nearly $60. I stared at the price tag, sighed, and paid anyway. The way his face lit up when the cashier handed him the case made it worth every penny. We spent the next couple of hours just wandering around. We window shopped, people watched, and even shared an ice cream. For those few hours, it felt like we were connecting again. The way we used to when he was younger. Before the divorce and before he started pushing everyone away. It was nice. Really nice. By the time I dropped him back at the hotel and headed to the bowling alley, I felt lighter than I had in months. Rested, happy even. Then the tournament started. I wish I could say I bowled amazingly. I don't. I started strong, sitting in second place after the first few games. But as the day went on, I tightened up. Nerves, fatigue, whatever it was. I slowly dropped down to 5th place by the end. It was disappointing, but I tried not to let it show. My friend Sarah from the home league won the whole thing. I was genuinely thrilled for her. She'd been practicing even harder than I had, and she deserved it. After the awards ceremony, a group of us decided to celebrate. They invited me along. "I'll come," I said, "but I'm not driving." The bar was right across the street from the hotel. Perfect. We ordered drinks. I'm not a heavy drinker, but that night I let myself indulge. A glass of wine turned into 2, then 3. We laughed, shared stories, toasted Sarah's victory. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a woman, not just a nurse or a mom. I felt alive. I stumbled back to the hotel room a little after 1 a.m., pleasantly tipsy, cheeks warm, a soft smile on my face. The room was dark except for the glow of the television. Ryan was asleep in his bed, blanket pulled up to his shoulders. The TV still playing some movie on low volume. I went to the bathroom, changed into my comfortable pajamas, an old tank top and loose shorts, and climbed into my bed. The room wasn't spinning, but everything felt soft and warm. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the day in my mind. The mall, Ryan's smile, the bowling, the laughter at the bar. Sleep wouldn't come. I tossed and turned for what felt like hours. The clock on the nightstand glowed, 2:47 a.m. when I heard movement from Ryan's bed. At first I thought he was just shifting in his sleep. But then the rhythm became clear, slow, careful, deliberate. The blanket was moving up and down in a steady motion. My breath caught in my throat. He was masturbating, right there, only a few feet away from me, thinking I was fast asleep. My first reaction was shock, then embarrassment. Then something else, something darker and warmer that I didn't want to name. I should have turned over. I should have pretended I heard nothing. I should have done anything except what I actually did. Instead, I stayed perfectly still and listened. Watched the faint movement under the blanket in the dim light of the TV. My heart started beating faster. A strange heat spread through my body. It had been years since I'd felt anything close to real desire. Years of loneliness, exhaustion, and suppressed needs. The longer I lay there, the stronger the feeling grew. My skin tingled. My breathing became shallow. I knew it was wrong, so incredibly wrong. But in that hazy, wine-softened moment, the wrongness only made it more intense. I lay there for nearly 10 minutes, biting my lip, thighs pressed together, fighting an internal battle I was slowly losing. Then, before I could stop myself, the words slipped out in a hoarse whisper. "Do you need any help with that?" The movement under the blanket stopped instantly. Silence filled the room, heavy, electric. For a second I panicked. I could still pretend I was talking in my sleep. I could roll over and act like nothing happened. But then, in a small, shaky voice, Ryan answered, "Yes." That single word changed everything. The word yes hung in the air between us like smoke. Heavy, thick, and impossible to ignore. I lay frozen in my bed for what felt like forever, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard I was sure he could hear it. The television cast flickering blue light across the hotel room, painting long shadows on the walls. Ryan hadn't moved. His blanket was still slightly tented, his body tense under it. He was waiting. My mind screamed at me to stop, to laugh it off as a joke, to turn over, pull the covers over my head, and pretend the last 30 seconds had never happened. I was his mother. He was my 15-year-old son. This was sick. This was wrong on every level a person could imagine. But my body wasn't listening to reason. The wine, the loneliness, the years of feeling invisible. As a woman, all of it had cracked something open inside me, and that soft, shaky yes from across the room had poured gasoline on the spark. Slowly I sat up. My legs felt numb as they swung over the edge of the bed. The carpet was cool under my bare feet. I stood there for a moment, breathing shallowly, staring at the shape of my son in the dim light. "Ryan," I whispered, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer. He just watched me. I took one step, then another. My heart was pounding so loudly it drowned out every rational thought. When I reached the side of his bed, I stopped. The air between us felt charged, electric. I could see his eyes, wide, nervous, but not scared. There was something else in them. Curiosity, need, the same forbidden hunger. I was feeling. My hand trembled as I reached out and gently tugged the blanket downward, just enough to expose him. He was still holding himself, his fist loosely wrapped around his erection. Even in the low light, I could see how hard he was, how his chest rose and fell quickly with each breath. For a long moment, I just looked. This was my little boy, the same child I had carried, nursed bandaged scraped knees and scolded for leaving dirty socks everywhere. And now he was something else. Something I had no right to see this way. But I couldn't look away. I reached down and carefully took his hand, pulling it away from himself. His skin was burning hot, slightly damp. The contact sent a shiver racing up my arm and straight between my legs. "Let me help you with that," I whispered, my voice husky and strange even to my own ears. He didn't speak. He just nodded once, eyes locked on mine. I sat down on the edge of his bed. The mattress dipped under my weight. My hand moved almost on its own, fingers brushing lightly along his length. He was so warm, so hard, yet the skin was impossibly soft. A small bead of clear fluid had formed at the tip. I stared at it, mesmerized. My breath was coming faster now. I could feel my nipples tightening against the thin fabric of my tank top. Heat pooled low in my belly. I leaned forward slowly. My hair fell across his stomach as I brought my face closer. I could smell the clean, slightly musky scent of him. My tongue slipped out and gently licked that glistening drop. The salty sweet taste exploded across my tongue. Ryan gasped sharply, his hips jerking upward. I looked up at him through my lashes. "Do you want me to keep going?" He nodded again, faster this time. His lips were parted, breathing ragged. I didn't wait for more permission. I lowered my head and took him into my mouth. The moment my lips wrapped around him, a low moan escaped my throat. He felt incredible, hot, smooth, pulsing against my tongue. I moved slowly at first, savoring every inch, every reaction. His hand came up hesitantly and rested on the back of my head. Fingers threading through my hair. I pulled back just enough to whisper, "If you pull my hair, I might like it." His fingers tightened slightly. Then a little harder when I took him deeper. I rewarded him by squeezing gently with my hand while my mouth worked him. The sounds he made, soft, surprised, desperate, sent waves of arousal through me. I could feel myself getting wet, my body responding in ways it hadn't in years. I took my time, alternating between long, slow strokes and faster movements, using my tongue to swirl around the sensitive head. Every time he twitched or moaned, I felt a fresh rush of heat between my thighs. It didn't take long. His breathing grew frantic. His hips started moving on their own, shallow little thrusts. His hand tightened in my hair, pulling harder now. "Mom!" he gasped, voice cracking. I didn't pull away. I took him as deep as I could and sucked gently. He came with a strangled groan, his whole body tensing. Warm pulses filled my mouth, salty and thick. I swallowed instinctively, taking every drop while his fingers gripped my hair tightly. When it was over, he collapsed back against the pillow, chest heaving, eyes half closed in stunned pleasure. I sat back slowly, wiping the corner of my mouth with the back of my hand. The reality of what I had just done crashed over me like cold water. We stared at each other in the flickering light of the TV. The silence was deafening. Finally I spoke, my voice barely above a whisper. We can't make a habit of this." Even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were a lie. A weak, pathetic attempt to cling to some shred of morality. Ryan didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, his face flushed, hair messy, looking so much older and younger at the same time. After a long pause, he said softly, "Okay?" But neither of us moved. I stayed sitting on the edge of his bed. The air in the room felt thick, heavy with everything we weren't saying. I should have gone back to my own bed. I should have turned on the lights and had a serious talk about how this could never happen again. Instead, I found myself reaching out and gently brushing a strand of hair off his forehead. He caught my hand and held it. The touch was innocent, but the way he looked at me wasn't. Minutes passed. The movie on TV continued playing, forgotten. Then Ryan spoke again, his voice small but clear. "Can you do it again?" My breath caught. I looked down. To my disbelief, he was already hardening again. Teenagers and their recovery time, something I had only ever heard about. A fresh wave of guilt slammed into me, but it was quickly drowned out by a darker, hotter surge of desire. My body was still aching, still needy from what we had just done. I knew I should say no. I knew this was spiraling out of control. But instead of refusing, I found myself whispering, "You're already ready again?" He nodded, cheeks burning red. I bit my lip, mind racing with thoughts I had no business having. Thoughts about how far this could go. Thoughts about what else we could do in this dark hotel room. 3 hours away from our real lives, where no one would ever know. The lines between mother and son had already blurred beyond recognition. And in that moment, I didn't want to redraw them. I leaned down again, my hair spilling over his chest. My hand wrapped around him once more, feeling him grow fully hard under my touch. "Just this once more," I whispered, knowing even as I said it that it was another lie. As my lips brushed against him again, I felt his fingers return to my hair. This time he didn't hesitate. And deep down, in the part of me that still knew right from wrong, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want him to stop. The second time I took him into my mouth. The guilt didn't disappear. It simply stopped mattering. Ryan's fingers tightened in my hair as I moved slower this time, more deliberately. I wanted to feel every reaction, every twitch, every shaky breath he took. The hotel room was silent except for the low murmur of the forgotten movie on TV and the wet, soft sounds my mouth was making. His hips lifted slightly off the bed, chasing the pleasure I was giving him. I let him. For the first time in years, I felt powerful, desired, needed in a way that had nothing to do with cooking meals, driving to school, or bandaging wounds at the hospital. He lasted longer the second time. His body was still sensitive from the first release. But youth gave him stamina I had almost forgotten existed. I used my hand in rhythm with my lips, twisting gently at the head, sucking softly when he groaned. Every time he whispered, "Mom," under his breath, a fresh wave of heat flooded between my legs. My nipples were painfully hard against my tank top. My shorts felt damp. I was aching in a way I hadn't allowed myself to feel since long before the divorce. When he came again, it was quieter, a deep, shuddering groan and several warm pulses across my tongue. I swallowed everything, then rested my cheek against his thigh for a moment, catching my breath. His hand stayed in my hair, stroking now instead of pulling. The tenderness in that touch made my chest tighten with emotions I couldn't name. I finally sat up, wiping my lips. The room felt smaller, hotter, the weight of what we had done twice now pressed down on both of us. "We really can't do this again," I said, my voice hoarse and unsteady. It was the wine, the stress, the trip. It stays here in this hotel room. When we go home tomorrow, we go back to normal. You're my son. I'm your mother. That's it. Ryan looked at me with those wide, dark eyes. His chest was still rising and falling rapidly. He was quiet for a long time before he spoke. "Okay, Mom." But the way he said it, soft, almost disappointed, told me he didn't believe it any more than I did. I stood up on shaky legs and walked back to my own bed. I lay down, pulled the covers over myself, and stared at the ceiling. My body was still buzzing, still hungry. Sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, heard his quiet gasps, felt the heat of him on my tongue. Around 4:30 a.m., I heard him shift in his bed again. "Mom?" he whispered into the darkness. I didn't answer at first. "Are you awake?" "Yes." Another long silence. "I can't stop thinking about it," he said, so quietly I almost missed it. My heart started racing again. I turned my head to look at him. The TV had gone to a blue screen, but enough light remained to see his silhouette. He was sitting up now, blanket pulled around his waist. "Ryan, we can't." "I know," he paused, "but I keep getting hard again. It hurts a little." The simple honesty in his voice broke something inside me. I told myself I was only going to check on him, comfort him, be a good mother. I got up and crossed the room once more. When I reached his bed, I saw he wasn't lying. He was fully hard again, standing proud against his stomach. The sight sent a fresh jolt of arousal through me, stronger than before. I sat on the edge of the bed. My hand moved without permission, wrapping around him gently. He hissed in pleasure at the contact. "Just to help you sleep," I whispered, lying to both of us. One last time. This time I didn't use my mouth right away. I stroked him slowly, learning what he liked. Firm pressure, twisting at the head, running my thumb over the sensitive underside. He leaned back against the pillows, eyes half closed, lips parted. His hand found mine, not to stop me, but to guide me a little faster. The guilt was still there, whispering in the back of my mind. "This is your son. This is incest. This is something you can never take back." But the voice grew quieter with every stroke, every moan he let out. After a few minutes, I couldn't resist anymore. I leaned down and took him between my lips again. He tasted like salt and skin, and something that was now achingly familiar. I bobbed my head deeper, relaxing my throat, taking as much of him as I could. His hand returned to my hair, but this time he didn't pull hard. He just held on, like he was afraid I might disappear. When he came the third time, it was weaker, but no less intense for him. I swallowed again, then kissed the tip gently before pulling away. We lay together afterward, my head resting on his chest, his arm awkwardly around my shoulders. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, I broke the silence. This has to stop when we get home. No more, ever, do you understand? He nodded against my hair. I understand. But we both knew the words were hollow. Dawn was starting to creep in through the curtains. The tournament was over. Sarah had won. I had placed 5th. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, I had crossed a line I could never uncross. We slept for a couple of hours, tangled in separate beds, but no longer really separate. When the alarm went off at 9 a.m., reality began to settle in again. We showered separately, packed our bags in silence, ate a quick breakfast downstairs without looking at each other too much. On the drive home, Ryan played his new game on his phone most of the way. I kept my eyes on the road, hands tight on the steering wheel. Every few minutes, memories from the night flashed through my mind. His taste, his sounds, the way he had looked at me when I took him in my mouth. My thighs clenched involuntarily. I felt shame. I felt excitement. I felt terrified. We got home late afternoon. The house felt the same. Same creaky floorboards. Same pile of laundry, same normal life waiting for us. Ryan went straight to his room. I unpacked, started a load of laundry, and tried to act like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. That night, after my shift at the hospital, I came home exhausted. Ryan was in the living room watching TV. When I walked in, he looked up at me. There was something new in his eyes. A secret understanding, a shared darkness. I told myself I would be strong. I would be the adult. I would shut this down before it destroyed us both. Instead, when he quietly asked if I wanted to watch a movie with him, I said yes. We sat on the couch, not touching, not speaking about the hotel, but the air between us felt different, charged, dangerous. Halfway through the movie, his hand brushed against mine on the cushion. I didn't pull away. Later, when the movie ended and the house was dark and quiet, he whispered from the other end of the couch, "Mom, I can't stop thinking about it." I closed my eyes. The guilt crashed over me again, but so did the heat, the memory of his body, the power I had felt, the way he had moaned my name, not Mom, but something more intimate in the heat of the moment. I knew I should send him to bed. I knew I should set boundaries. I knew this path led somewhere dark and possibly irreversible. But when I opened my eyes and looked at him, I heard myself say the words I had promised myself I wouldn't say again. "Come here." He moved closer. And just like that, in our own living room, 3 hours away from that hotel room, the cycle began again. I told myself it would only be this once more, just to get it out of our systems, just to satisfy the curiosity. But deep down, I already knew the truth. The naughty ideas I had pushed away in the hotel were creeping back stronger than ever. Ideas about touching him differently. Ideas about letting him touch me. Ideas about how far we could take this secret without anyone ever finding out. The guilt was still there, heavy and suffocating at times. But the desire was heavier, and as Ryan's hand tentatively reached for me that night, I realized something with chilling clarity. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of something complicated, something dangerous, something I was no longer sure I wanted to stop.